Thank you so much for tuning in today for Trailblazer Tuesday. And on behalf of Iota Phi Lambda, Epsilon Phi of Iota Phi Lambda, I want to introduce a young lady who doesn't need an introduction, but I am going to give her the greatest introduction I know to give. And so I want to give a little bit of her bio to you today. This is Dr. Maya Rockeymooore Cummings. She leads the Global Policy Solutions, a Washington, D.C. based policy firm that makes policy work for people and their environments. She is a regular guest on radio and television shows. Maya has appeared on NPR, CNN, Black Entertainment Television, ABC World News Tonight, Fox News, Al Jazeera, and C-SPAN. Her opinions have also been quoted by the New York Times, Washington Post, USA Today, LA Times, Boston Globe, Black America Web, and Houston Chronicle, among other prominent national news sources. I just want to say, please, everyone, welcome Dr. Maya Rockeymooore Cummings. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. It's my delight to be with you tonight.
Yes, ma'am. So we are here and we're spotlighting amazing women who have blazed trails in politics. And for you, I know that you have done some amazing work. And I really want our audiences to understand and really get a feel for why you're being spotlighted today. So I want to lead into the first question. What life experiences led you to feel so passionate about being involved in politics?
Well, being the fourth generation from slavery in America should be enough. But, I grew up with parents who were from the Jim Crow South. They were from Texas. I'm a fourth generation Texan. And I grew up with stories of my parents telling us what it was like living in the Jim Crow South, having separate and unequal schools, having to, sit in the black part of the movie theater and drink out of Negro-only water fountains. And my parents instilled in us that, that it was basically we have to serve in order to be free in this country. We have to be active. We can't be passive, sitting around thinking that just going to a 9 to 5 is sufficient, that we have to become active in community, and we have to, make sure that we're vigilant about fighting for our rights. And so I went to Prairie View for undergrad. I was the chair of the political science club. I became the social action chair of my chapter of Delta Sigma Theta. I led, I ran a campaign when I was an undergrad, helped to lead a march for voting rights. At a very early age, and then I had the example of my parents who were also very active in terms of having their voices heard. My dad was the president of the San Antonio branch of the NAACP. With a lot of great mentoring from my parents, and then seeing, their example and that of others, I just picked up the mantle and continued forward.
Okay. So let me ask this question. Who, or I can say maybe what, maybe something happened, but what was your biggest influence when it came to going into politics? I know you talked about, your mom and your dad. Is there anyone else influential that pushed you into it, that they were like, this is something that you should do, that you never, did you think that this would be something you would go into?
Yes. When I got to Prairie View, I chose political science. Now I chose it because my dad was Air Force, so we traveled around the world, and I saw how different people lived. And we kept coming back to West Texas, where my parents are from, and seeing how badly Black people were living in the small Texas town that they were from. And I was curious about why there was so much variation and difference, why African Americans, especially in towns across the country, were doing so poorly. And I wanted to basically lend my time and talent to changing that, to making, better opportunities possible for people of all different backgrounds. I thought that racism was, something that we needed to solve. If I couldn't in my lifetime, I certainly wanted to make sure that I could make a contribution towards eliminating it. And so, I went on to, do a lot of things in politics, including working on Capitol Hill. And so when I got to Capitol Hill in 1997 to collect data for my dissertation, one of the first people I met on Capitol Hill was my late husband, Congressman Elijah Cummings. And we had a lot in common. We became friends, and then eventually, fell in love and got married. And yes, he's been a mentor, and in addition to being my husband, an inspiration, somebody whom I took a lot of advice from and certainly looked up to. And so, when he passed away, unfortunately, he passed away in October of 2019. I ran for his seat in Congress. Unfortunately, I did not win. There were 32 people who ran for that seat, and I came in second out of 32, but second is not number one. And so with that, I, just continue to do work for change in the ways that I can with the platforms that I have.
Wow. So I'm inspired myself. So I have a quick question, a follow-up question to you saying that you ran for your late husband's seat. Now, there are women out there, or even ladies. I know I'm a teacher and I teach a lot of high schoolers. And what is some advice you would give someone who they didn't necessarily get the actual goal of getting the seat, but they were almost there? What is the advice that you would give to them?
I guess I would give them the advice of don't give up, although I feel like I'm giving up. I would say don't give up. There are different ways that you can serve. Even if you don't run for the same seat over again, there might be another seat you run for, but continue on, continue to be active, continue to be involved. Don't give up in terms of the project of making a difference. All of our voices need to be heard. My friend April Ryan, she is the White House correspondent. Whenever you turn on the television and see Biden, she's sitting in the audience. She has a book out called Black Women Will Save the World. And I truly believe that African-American women, we have been at the bottom of the barrel, bottom of the totem pole for so long that we understand what needs to be fixed. And we're willing to lift our voices and challenge the system to change the system to fix those problems. Why? Because, we have nothing to lose. It's not like we're like overrepresented on Wall Street or in Silicon Valley. The fact of the matter is that Black women are willing to put their lives on the line to basically tell the truth and speak truth to power. So, Black women all across the country have been involved historically and continue to be, and I'm inspired by that as well.
Wow. Again, like I said, you are really pushing me into the path that I want to go down, and being able to speak with you is really speaking life into me. And I'm sure to anyone that's listening right now, I'm sure that you're speaking life into them. So I just first let me continue to keep saying thank you so much for your words of wisdom, because that's something that's needed, especially someone of your stature who has been in the trenches and has seen a no or two, or has heard people fiercely tell you you shouldn't do those things. So I appreciate you for being able to give us those words of wisdom.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. So that leads me to I would be my next question. What are some challenges you've had on your political journey of getting?
Oh my gosh! Well, you mean besides losing? So actually, let me just back up. I started a firm called Global Policy Solutions. I've been in business since 2005. I also started a nonprofit called the Center for Global Policy Solutions, and we did a lot of advocacy work. Unfortunately, we closed down that center a couple of years ago, right before COVID. But with that, that was one challenge, making sure that, that I, did things in the proper way to line that up. Another challenge is I'm the first African American woman to ever run for governor in the state of Maryland as well. So when and I did this several years before my husband passed. But unfortunately, just when I got started with the campaign, about 3 months in, my husband got sick, and I actually had to drop out to become his caregiver, which was probably one of the most difficult challenges of my life. You know, he'd always been self-sufficient. I'd always been self-sufficient, even though we were a couple. But you know, when he got sick, it was me, and it was on me. And for 2.5, almost 3 years, I was his primary caregiver. I had to, as I mentioned, close down my nonprofit, lay off staff people. I had to shut down the office that I had in DC and move all the stuff up to Baltimore. And I became basically a solo entrepreneur, and I hadn't been that in a long time. So, you know, that was one major challenge. Another one is being attacked politically. You know, when I became chair of the Maryland Democratic Party, I won, the contest to become chair of the Maryland Democratic Party. And in that position, they attacked me and my husband. When I say that, I'm talking about political opponents. And it wasn't fun because when you get attacked, you have to defend yourself. And sometimes you have to come out of your own pocket to hire a lawyer to defend yourself. Everything that they said about me was a lie and wrong. But, it was hard having to have so many people, look at you like, oh, this is what they're saying. Is it true? Is it true? So you have to have a thick skin. You have to, find ways to maintain your dignity, even as you fight the battles out there. There are a lot of people that do not want to see us win. And if they think that you can become powerful, if they think that your voice is one that can sway people and make them mobilize, then they're going to try to shut you down. And even if it's not true, they will throw it out there to try to shut you down. So, trying to kind of beat through the lies and continue to walk in dignity and continue to have a voice has been a challenge because, it hurts when things like that happen. But, you got to keep going.
Okay. So advice is just keep going, even though they're going to attack you. It's going to happen. If you're in politics, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. There's no doubt about it. It's going to happen.
Okay. So it leads me into another question. I know you were talking about your late husband, who larger than life. Okay, the incomparable Mr. Elijah Cummings. So, what was your most memorable moment as the wife of a well-known politician?
There are so many memorable moments, but I think the one that stands out for me right now is when we went to the inauguration of Donald Trump. And afterwards, we were invited to have lunch to celebrate Donald Trump's presidency. And they seated us at the table with Donald Trump's relatives. And then halfway through the meal, Elijah and I went up to go speak to Donald Trump and congratulate him on his win. And then Elijah asked him to meet so that they could talk about lowering prescription drug costs for the American people. I remember that like it was yesterday, and it was very memorable because what happened after that was just a lot of drama. As you well know, the Trump administration was highly unusual, to put it lightly, but that was a memorable experience. I had other very memorable experiences, but that was one of the most memorable.
I have to ask, how did you feel, right, as a woman in politics, but not only a woman in politics, an African American woman in politics, and you're sitting, and I don't think it has anything to do with being on the aisle or being on the left or the right end of it. But how did you feel being in that room with Donald Trump, as he is, of course, the victor in the race? How did that make you feel?
It made me feel, I was surreal. I mean, it was just like, are you serious? And not only that, but Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton were in the room too.
Oh,
So, you know, they were there as the people who had been beat, you know, by this man. It was just the most surreal experience. But let me actually take you to a high note because, you know, I was also, Elijah and I were also invited when Barack Obama won. We were in the stands behind Barack Obama. And then the night of his inauguration, after he and Michelle came back to the White House from the last ball, we were invited to a private party at the White House. And so they came in and we were all, you know, screaming and hollering, and people in the room included like Oprah and Stedman, and those memories were just as incredible. We were invited to several state dinners during the Obama administration. We were invited to the first Super Bowl party, the Obama's first Super Bowl party, where you know, Barack Obama teased me about getting too much food, eating too much food. So, you know, there were a lot of incredible highlights to being a spouse of a congressman, a lot of experiences that, you know, many people would never see in a lifetime. And so, you know, I feel like I need to start documenting some of these stories just to share.
I'm waiting on the book. Okay. I am going to, please send
Yes,
me I'm going to buy the book wherever it is. I don't care where it is. Barnes and Nobles, Amazon. I'm going
yeah.
to buy the book.
I have a lot of stories.
I listen. If I could just be a fly on the wall in some of the memories that I'm sure you've had and the experiences that you've had along your journey. Okay. So, how did you two balance being involved in politics and the family time?
Oh, that is a very interesting question. You said politics and family time?
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
So, you know, it was difficult because, you know, during the week he had to, and I did too. I mean, we were traveling back and forth almost every day between Baltimore and DC. That's a 45-minute drive each way. Most of the times we didn't do it in the same car. So, and then, but then oftentimes, you know, we would have common events in DC in the evening and, or on the weekends. But even on the weekends, you know, he had constituent services and I often had work to do. So, you know, we were a hardworking couple, but because we were in the same, you know, we were in the same lane, so to speak, with regards to politics, because, you know, I used to work on the Hill. I knew his life. I was the chief of staff for another congressman. I was the chief of staff for Charlie Rangel of New York at one point in my career. So I knew what it was like to actually run a congressional office and to be a member of Congress because I worked for a member of Congress. So I understood Elijah's life inside and out, and he understood mine. So we had a lot of commonalities and a lot of things that we did together as well.
Okay. So, did you have a lot of work-life balance with all of that happening?
No, I would say it was almost all work. But there were things that we would take time and, you know, we would plan vacations and, you know, we came up with a bucket list. I asked him what he always wanted to do. And his first thing that he always wanted to do was to he always wanted to ride the overnight train to somewhere, you know. So I bought tickets for us to ride the train down to Florida to Miami. And literally, we were on that train for 3 hours before we were trying to crawl out. Because, you know, it's long and tedious, but he got his experience of what it was like to sleep in a sleeping car on a train.
Well, you listen.
Yeah.
As long as you all were able to do it together, I'm sure it was an amazing and
It
rewarding.
was. We got to bond and spend a lot of time together. So the vacations are what we look forward to, actually.
Wow. Okay. So, last question.
Mhm.
So, being that you are a trailblazer in politics and you have experienced a lot of ups and downs, what is your highest moment in politics or your greatest accomplishment in politics that you're like, man, this is amazing.
So I'm going to tell you two. One is an advocacy story, and then one is running for office, not political office, but party office.
Okay.
So I I am considered a Social Security expert. My first job on Capitol Hill was working on the House Ways and Means Social Security Subcommittee, where I was responsible for building a coalition to fight against the privatization of Social Security, because Wall Street was trying to get its hands on Social Security money, which would devastate all of our grandparents and everybody else that relies on Social Security. And then George Bush, your former governor down there in Texas, became president, and he said he was going to privatize the Social Security system. And I was the expert on Social Security privatization. So we mobilized all these organizations. I was everywhere. I traveled everywhere across the country. I was educating unions. I was educating organizations. I was speaking at events, all about why this is such a bad idea. And I was able to help lead basically a coalition of people who were able to defeat a sitting president of the United States of America. George Bush never got to privatize the Social Security program because of the work that we put in to make it happen, or to prevent it from happening. And the second thing is that when I ran for and won the chair of the Maryland Democratic Party, that was a highlight. I campaigned, I got up and made my speech, and 500 people, a majority of those people voted for me, and I won.
Wow. Again, when you write your book, I will be first in line. Just put a little, put Miss Harris, put Bianca, person
Yeah.
name, before you became as amazing as you already are. I mean, you have done so much for politics, especially leading the charge for Black women in politics. And I truly appreciate the time that you have given us today. And I truly thank you for that time that you have. So, are there any last or parting words you have, or any little advice that you have, any more advice that you have, or
I just want to say that I want to say this. Thank you to your organization for highlighting the importance of politics. We will not be able to transform our communities and our lives and our households without being in politics. And yet, so many of us think that we can't be involved. Maybe they think that because your organization is a 501c3, we can't ever be involved in politics. Or because, this or that, this is something not for us. That is absolutely incorrect. Even 501c3s, 5% of their time, they can actually lobby and they can advocate and educate. And even if you're a part of a 501c3, that doesn't mean you always have to wear that hat. You can step out without your t-shirt and your hat on and go and do anything you want to do politically. So never let basically a IRS status for an organization prevent you from doing what you need to do in order to educate, mobilize your communities. I just want to encourage Black women everywhere, especially, to make sure that they are fully engaged and never, never let up. We've got to keep pressing forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you so much. We are so excited that you are our Tuesday Trailblazer. And thank you on behalf of Epsilon Phi of Iota Phi Lambda for having this interview with us. We're so happy. I hope that everyone who was listening took some nuggets and some gems. As you can see, I was writing down everything because it was amazing talking to you today. And thank you so much for it.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.